Hi everybody, welcome back to the kitchen. In case you missed the memo, Thanksgiving is tomorrow. And one of the things that everyone needs on the Thanksgiving table is butter. Whether you need it for your mashed potatoes or perhaps you've got some nice dinner rolls, whatever it is, butter is one of those things that you really kind of have to have on the table. Now it's really easy to go to the store and buy butter. It is a little bit spendy right now, but it's easy to do. I like to make my own butter. I just do. It's fun. It gives me some buttermilk to use in my baking at other times. It's just a really great way to kind of get back in touch with what it is that you're eating. Now, I'm not going to sit here with a butter churn and beat cream to death for a couple of hours. I'm going to use a little technology. It's really easy. And if you've ever wondered about making your own butter, well, let me show you how to do it. So here we go. You need basically two ingredients to make salted butter. You need heavy whipping cream and salt, which is optional. You can always make unsalted butter. So I have here a pint of heavy whipping cream, and I'm just going to pour this into the bowl in the stand mixer. This is going to give me about a cup of butter and about a cup of buttermilk at the end of the day. A lot of people will use a whisk. I prefer to use the paddle attachment. Kind of makes it a little bit less messy for no other reason than that. And I'm going to start this at low speed and just let that start to come together. Don't throw this away, by the way, because this is where you're going to keep the buttermilk when the process is finished. So things are starting to firm up a little bit. Let's go ahead and increase that speed a little bit more. It's still pretty liquid, but what will happen is all of the milk solids will begin to coagulate together, and what will be left is the buttermilk, which will strain off and save. It'll start sounding pretty sloppy before this process is all done, but that's how you know you've gotten it right. So things are starting to come together now. The cream is thickening up, but it's still going to take a little while longer. It's going to seem like you're going to be here forever, but just remember, you're not actually sitting here churning the butter. You're watching a mixer. So now we're getting into some pretty stiff peaks on our heavy cream, and it's going to start sounding a little bit sloppy because as the buttermilk starts to separate out from the milk solids, that's just kind of what it sounds like. And that's again when I'll start to reduce the speed on the mixer just to keep it from sloshing out all over the kitchen. It is really starting to come together. I'm seeing the milk solids start to coagulate in the bowl, and you can start to hear the buttermilk separate itself out from the butter. Now, I haven't added any salt yet, and I've done that once before where I added the salt too soon and I wound up with salted whipped cream, and I think it had to be because the salt absorbed the liquid in the cream before it had a chance to separate out into buttermilk. But look at that, you can see the heavy cream is now pretty much turned into butter, and we've got a really nice about cup of buttermilk in the bottom of the bowl. I'm just going to let that go for a little bit longer like that, and then we'll go on to the next step. So what I've got here in the sink is a strainer, a cup measure, and some cheesecloth. And I'm going to take this, the butter and the buttermilk, and we're just going to strain that off. We'll go ahead and get all of that in there. And if you wanted to add salt, this is going to be about the time to do it. And I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. But before we do that, we have to get this out of the strainer. And I'm going to go ahead and give that a squeeze to get as much of that buttermilk out of there as we can. And there are a couple of reasons for this. The reason butter gets sour is because of the buttermilk. When you wash it off like this, and that is what I'm going to do next, is you can see I've got just about a cup of buttermilk. Set that over there. This now needs to be rinsed. And I'm going to rinse that in cold water just to rinse the remaining buttermilk off of the butterball. So we've got that over there. Get the rest of that out of there. Now I'm going to drop this back into the bowl. Bring that over there where you can see it a little better. And I'm just going to sprinkle on a little, I like to use Himalayan pink salt. You can use kosher salt, and I have done that before. And then we'll just kind of incorporate that through into the butter. And it is nice and buttery. Let's give that one more rinse. And I'll wrap that up in a paper towel for a moment. And then we'll talk about storage. So this is my butter containment device. It's basically from a Chinese takeout. And there's still, I made some earlier, there's still quite a bit in there, but as I said, Thanksgiving is coming and there's no reason not to have plenty of butter. So we put that in there. That goes in the refrigerator. There's kind of a big controversy about should you store butter out on the counter? Should you leave it out? Should you make sure that it's soft when you go to spread it on toast? Do what you like. But I will say, when I was a kid, my parents always kind of had the latest and greatest of everything. And I don't know why, but they did. Our refrigerator in the 1970s had a compartment built into the refrigerator that was called the butter keeper. And it had a built-in warming unit in it, which kept the butter at a little bit warmer temperature so that it was easy to spread. This is called a butter bell. And it's got about an inch of water in the bottom of it, which forms a seal. And the butter has been out on the counter for probably the better part of a week, and it is just fine. So if you want to keep your butter out on the counter, please don't worry about that. If you're a person that thinks, oh, it's got to go in the fridge, to each his own. The last thing we're going to do is store the buttermilk. So it really is as simple as pouring it back into the container that the cream came in. Like I said, you're going to get about a cup, which is enough for most recipes. When I do bread and things that call for buttermilk, you can buy powdered buttermilk. And I do that a lot, actually, and just make it as I need it. But this can go in the freezer. When you get ready to use it, thaw it out, and you've got your own homemade buttermilk to go along with your homemade butter. And that's how we make butter. It's an easy process and one that really is pretty satisfying when you think about making things for yourself and knowing where things come from in your kitchen. Now, am I going to be like the AI presentations and tell you you'll never buy butter again? Of course not. There's always going to be a time when you've got, oh, I need butter. You're walking through the store, you pick it up off the shelf, and oh, look, it's on sale. I get that. But if you're so inclined, I hope I've given you a little bit of inspiration to be able to make your own butter and just enjoy the process of being in your kitchen. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you next time.